Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they're releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click the link below and back the Kickstarter today.
We are live as Barron, right in the middle of eating. Look at that. And here we are. This is the summer version of Roll for Combat. We got Barron relaxing, eating. He's not wearing a suit. We got Professor, Dungeon Master. He's in, I don't even know where he's some sanctum, some inner sanctum. He's like wearing an Aruba hat. He's got a button-down shirt. Next thing you're going to see like dogs and cats flying in and like kids running around. Like, what's going on? Is this summer mode? Are we just all just chilling? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, that's what I'm trying to do.
That's what I'm doing for the next 3 weeks until school starts again.
That's right. That's right.
This is work. This is how I spend my days. I'm painting all these models.
And I like how your office has the little the dungeon wall in the background there. Look at that. It's like you're always in the motif. Like you'll be painting and then you look over and you're like, yes, I'm inside of a dungeon cell painting my little miniatures. I don't do any of that. How are you two? I haven't seen you in all of a week. It seems like. Has it been a week? I don't know. I went on vacation immediately after Gen Con, so to me it feels like 10 years ago.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's been 2 weeks, and I had a week to like get reacclimated to reality, and then now I'm down in Florida for like my real day job. Like I'm doing training for that. So, and it's been nuts down here, so I'm already exhausted. And what is it? Is it even Wednesday? I feel like it's Gen Con, but nowhere near as fun.
Tuesday.
It's only the exhaustion.
It's Tuesday, I guess. So
I had to sleep about like for the week after Gen Con. I was taking 2 naps a day. It might have been because I stopped taking 5-hour energy, and I was just exhausted.
So what was your highlight? Well, let's see. You did Professor DM. You did a whole video showing, and that was great. I was so jealous of you. I was like, I should have been doing that. I got to do that next year. You have a great video on your Patreon. I don't know if you did it public yet, but showing your history and what you did at Gen Con, and it was like a little travelogue. I loved it. I'm like, I'm doing that next year. And Barron, this was your first time ever at
This
Gen
was
Con.
my first time at Gen Con. It's kind of wild to see, for the population of 4 American suburb-sized towns descend upon Indianapolis. I learned that the only thing that brings more people to Indianapolis is the Indianapolis 500, which is just mind-boggling to me.
Mm-hmm.
That there are that many gamers who want to go to Gen Con. It's pretty wild. I don't know. It was intense. It was just entirely overwhelming.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I didn't get sick because I have a con score of like a 7.
Yeah, I usually get con crud every time, but I'm fine too. Kind of amazing. I guess the professor was just shielding us from all that He radiates goodwill.
I've never gotten sick after a convention.
Really?
Never. Yeah, I wash my hands compulsively, and I I use disinfectant. Like even before COVID, I was always, and I don't share dice. I've never gotten sick.
Do people share dice? Is that a thing?
Sometimes it's, oh, I forgot my dice. You give it to them, and then,
I guess.
Huh. Well, I so far so good. I haven't gotten sick. That would have been bad too if I got sick and then on vacation. I would I was actually a little worried. I'm like, I don't know if I don't get sick. But we are back and lots to cover. A few quick notes for people who are new. I'm Steve Glicker from Roll for Combat. I run this little channel. I also run the Battle Zoo line of products for Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, and looks like Starfinder in the near future, since they're going to be using the same rule set. And we actually have a Kickstarter that's ending this Friday. World of Battle Zoo, Indigo Isles. 280 pages, new ancestries, races, dragons, magic items, PC options, towns, NPCs, everything. It'll work for any system. And Mark and I have been really working hard on this, and we have really, really cool new unique dragons. These are wild dragons, so if you're like, I've seen all the dragons, you haven't seen these dragons, because we invented them. So there you go. They're actually party dragons. They're kind of fun. I made them good and sort of very PC friendly. So these dragons are very, very usable as NPCs or quest givers or shopkeepers. So you can actually use them both as enemies and NPCs, which I like, because dragons, everything is better with the dragon. In fact, there's a part in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's not a spoiler, but in the very beginning where you're retelling a story, and in the middle of the story, the person who's asking you about it asks about the dragon. And you're like, and there's no dragon. So you're like, sure, there's a dragon. There's a gold dragon. Sure, there was a dragon right in the middle. And then at the end you said, why did you ask about the dragon? And the guy goes, because every story is better with a dragon in it. So there you go. I was like, you know what? You're not wrong. That was like really good. And then we are joined by Mark Seifter. He's gone. He's banished from the channel. We have instead, who's going to take over? We have Barron de Ropp, who's eating. So I'll let you eat. We'll have Professor Dungeon Master introduce himself. He needs no introduction. Like when we were walking around Gen Con, I think like 5 people said hi to me. Maybe 10 people said hi to Barron. 10 people said hi to Professor Dungeon Master every 30 minutes. At least. It was like walking around with royalty. It was like walking around with Gary Gygax himself. Or at least Luke. Everyone recognized the professor.
No, that's totally accurate. There was one for about 3 hours we were walking around with Ben Milton from Questing Beast. And he was kind of in the same role of like our level of recognition. And but what was really funny is whenever we walked by an independent publisher booth, like everybody at the booth just like dropped whatever they had in their hands and worshipped Ben Milton from Questing Beast, like because he does like OSR
right.
PG reviews, so they just worshipped the ground he was walking on. It was so funny to watch because like he's made such an influence on the visibility of those publishers, so it's really fun to see.
It was fun. It definitely was fun. I got a lot of recognition on my talks, so that helped. But but that's all it had. Professor Dungeon Master, everyone's coming over. You took pictures with everyone. You got to meet everyone. But I did get to at least introduce you to Ginny D, so at least I got to help him out with that.
It's very exciting.
Although I'm still angry, I never got to meet Deathbringer.
Yeah, he was. I'm gonna have to figure out a better way to transport him. He was in a case. I think Barron was with me. We were going to one of my games. Might have been where some people said, "Hey, where's Deathbringer?" And I had the case with me, and I took him out. But next year I have to have them in a special thing in my pocket or something so people can pose with them.
I know. You had all those famous people you were meeting, and you see all those pictures, and they're all with you.
Yeah.
Just you. No Deathbringer.
When do we get Deathbringer models? I want one of my own. That's what I want.
Before too long, you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised. I didn't talk to you about that at all.
I mean, you did kind of, but
all right.
it was just I was more teasing you than anything.
That's top. It's top secret, but it's gonna happen.
Oh.
It's top secret, everyone, except that it's already happening.
Oh, that is great. I want to see Deathbringer as that. And the thing is, you don't have to get a whole set of them unless you're gonna have like Deathbringer's family, are you? You have like Deathbringer and Deathbringer's wife, his kids, the dog.
We'll see. We'll see how far it goes.
Barron, will you be cosplaying a Deathbringer next year?
If I go to Gen Con,
Yeah.
I'll cosplay as Deathbringer. That'd be dope.
God.
I'll do it. I'll make it out of cardboard.
That would be fantastic. You can have the professor walking around with Deathbringer on his side. If you,
that would be awesome.
I could ask my brother. He's a award-winning costume designer, Hollywood costume designer. I've
really?
asked him. Yeah. He did Ghostbusters, and he said a million
cool.
things. Yeah, I'm trying to think of things he did. You can look him up. He's done like a million things. He was nominated for Academy Award for Milk, and he did. I don't know.
For Milk?
Yeah, for Milk. Remember?
The armor in that was off the hook.
He can do armor. He can do anything. He can do anything.
Is Milk a film that I don't know about?
Milk?
Yeah.
Won Academy Awards.
Sean Penn, man.
Yeah, Sean Penn.
It's a 2008 movie.
Yeah.
How have I never heard of this? All right.
It's excellent. It's excellent.
All right.
My brother's in it too. They threw him in as a cameo. I'm like, Danny, what are you doing in that movie? He goes, the director threw me in to embarrass me. I was like, okay. But yeah, it's great. It's great having that in the family. I once cosplayed. My brother had me cosplay as a funny cop in a Halloween party in Manhattan, and I swear to God, I had like 50 people stop me in the street asking for like directions and stuff because they thought I was a real cop. And I was like, Danny, don't do my costume anymore. It was a little scary after a while.
It was too real.
It was so real. I was like, but it didn't look real at all. But it was real enough, I guess, for drunken Halloween in Manhattan in the 90s. So, but we're not here to talk about Gen Con and drunken Halloween. We're here to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 and how it's going to save Dungeons and Dragons.
Save Dungeons and Dragons.
It's gonna save it.
I could see that for sure.
So for those of you who have not into video games or living under a rock, Baldur's Gate 3 came out 2 weeks ago, right during Gen Con, and I've been saying for a couple weeks now, because the studio that made it is Larian, which is probably one of my favorite studios of all time. And I said this game was going to be huge. And this game is now the highest rated PC game in history. in history of the world. It is the #1 rated game ever.
Like more than Ocarina of Time?
No, this is of PC.
Of
PC games. It has an average of 97. I think Ocarina of Time is 98. The point is, it is in such rarefied air. This is in the top 10 video games in the history of video games levels at this point. And no one expected this to happen. My favorite thing, I saw a comment a couple weeks ago. I was talking about this. I was talking about how excited I was to play this in one of my streams. And someone said, the quote was, I've been playing video games for 20 years. I've never heard of Baldur's Gate. None of my friends have heard of Baldur's Gate. No one's going to play this game. And I was like, right. I guess because you have never heard of it and your friends have never heard of it, therefore no one will play this game and no one's ever heard of it, which is how I always like to get my information. But yet, even my friends who have played Baldur's Gate, I told them Baldur's Gate 3 was coming out, and in my regular group, none of them even knew. They didn't even hear about it, even though it's been in works for 6 years, and it's in beta. It was in early access for 3. It sort of came out of nowhere, and everyone is playing this thing. And not only is it, the last part is Baldur's Gate 2 came out in the year 2000. And Baldur's Gate 1 came out in 1998, so it has been a long time. So it is understandable. But what makes this so interesting is that it's a genre of games. It's a 3/4 3D engine. It's like 2.5D 3D, they call it, where you like oversee, you have a party of 4 players. It's using the actual D&D rules. It's very complex. It's a very complex game. And one of the things that's been happening all these years is that people have been simplifying role-playing games, have been making them a lot easier to play, have been streamlining them, and mostly that has to do with console development, because you can have a very complex game on a PC, but to make Dungeons and Dragons on a console, like how? I mean, you can't do it. It's too hard. Well, this thing's coming out for console. It's coming out for PlayStation next month. It's coming out for Xbox next year. It's coming out for Mac OS later this year. It's probably going to come out for Switch because the engine works on Switch. And it's probably going to come out for the iPad sometime next year. So this thing is coming out for everything. Yeah, the iPad.
Wow.
It's coming out for everything. Well, the engine works. The engine, they wrote it's the same one they wrote Divine Divinity 2 on. And Divine Divinity 2 works on all those systems. So if it works on those
I assume it's written in Unreal, right?
It's written in their own proprietary engine.
Oh, okay.
And that's a big part of it, and we'll go into it. But the biggest thing about this is that the game is Dungeons and Dragons. Like, if you play it, it has every spell, it has the rules, it has the character classes, it has the subclasses. Like, yeah, it's of course a little customized for a computer, but it is close enough. It's close enough that if you play this, you will have a good understanding of how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And you have all these millions of people who are playing this game, and how many of them do you think were playing Dungeons and Dragons beforehand, or never even heard of Dungeons and Dragons, or are aware of it and never played it? And you can play this game, and this is gateway game into D&D and into role-playing in general. And then you get to see it's like real role-playing. We were talking before, Barron, like there's a D20 that rolls on the screen. Like you actually see die rolling. You actually see successes. Like when you do passive perception checks, it actually rolls the die and tells you success or failure. Like you see dice appearing on the screen. And it's as close to a actual game, a role-playing game, than you can get on the computer. I know you can't really do it, but it's pretty damn close.
I mean, I think what's really interesting is how much it reinforces you to actually learn how to play the game, especially in like the crunchy, meticulous combat mechanics of 5th edition, which honestly, like I've gotten away from playing 5th edition for the most part, but I keep like yearning for the day that one day everyone will just know how to play 5th edition and I can go back to doing really intricate combat encounters, because I really like the wargaming aspect of it. And I think a lot of people are going to learn how to actually do that. And, you know, you're not going to have to worry about, you know, people asking, you know, which die do I roll? People will just know. I roll the D20 when I want to make an attack roll. And if I'm on higher ground and I, you know, create some, you know, use the terrain to my advantage, I'll actually get some various kinds of bonuses to my attack roll. Like, you just instinctively learn this stuff by playing the game, because the combat is hard. At lower levels, the combat's hard. So, like, I haven't played it myself, but I've watched a few Let's Plays. It's really interesting to see just how much the video game aspect of it reinforces the combat mechanics in 5th edition more generally.
Yeah, man, one thing I want to emphasize, it has every spell. Now, you're like, how can they put find familiar in there? It works. You find a familiar. You're like, okay, well, does it have speak with dead? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not only does it have speak with dead, but you speak with a lot of dead in this game. I mean, it's crazy. It's like everything. It's almost like a personal challenge for them to figure out how to get every single spell into this game and make it work in a video game mechanism, a mechanic, and it works.
I want to see, because this is something that I actually have been predicting with the VTT, that they would just be lazy with the new 6th edition, 5.5 edition, in that like illusion magic is so impossible to represent on a monitor. It's impossible to represent on a TV screen unless you're doing some sort of like generative AI thing where you're building a 3D model of whatever you say to build, like in a chat interface or something. Like, we're not there yet. So I don't know how they're going to do illusion magic, but I want to see illusion magic done well, because I trust that the studio has pulled off illusion magic well in this game. And I've not seen that yet. I want to go look that up now that we're having this conversation.
They have illusion magic. They have you can, well, what I've been doing is you can cast an illusion of your character and then the monsters attack it and usually kill it and then go after you. I have spiritual weapon. It's great. You cast spiritual weapon, you cast the type of weapon you want. You can have it scatter or fly across the battlefield attacking it's great. It's so visual. So here's the thing. Now that you get to see how much fun a video game aspect of D&D is, and it's in fact done right, do you think this makes the VTT more possible, more realistic in what they're trying to do? Because it's been my it's a weird thing. You know where I'm going with this. It's like, because I've been saying, this is what they're going. Like, they're trying to turn into a video game. Well, guess what? Here it is. It's not even imagination. It's like, here's a video game of Dungeons and Dragons. The spells work, the combat works, the monsters work. Everything's in there. Everything. And it's scary.
I mean, let me restate your question with a different question. Which are people going to actually use?
Right.
The VTT? Or are they going to have a modding community around Baldur's Gate 3?
Yeah.
Because Baldur's Gate 3 as a modding community is going to be way more impactful than the VTT. I just don't see how the VTT can remotely compete. It's a crappier version of the Baldur's Gate 3 engine with none of the actual story and voice acting and all of the features. I just don't see how it's going to happen.
I mean, Professor, you're Mr. Everyone has to sit around the table, and it's a visual. It's like almost a religious, social contract and experience. But the world is going towards this way, and obviously, I mean, I unfortunately play all my games online, and I have been with my friends because we all moved away, and I wanted to keep playing with them. So we play weekly online, and is it the same as playing in person? No, but at least we get to see each other and talk to each other, and it's better than nothing. I mean, what's your take on this future that we're pounding down that isn't going to go away anytime soon?
So what I think is you're going to have a real division between video games and tabletop play, as it's traditionally been. And the Baldur's Gate thing provides a really interesting question. And to me, it's actually a threat to the VTT. And I'll tell you why. There are certain people and that we grew up playing with, Stephen, that they preferred video games. They prefer Diablo and World of Warcraft because for them, Dungeons and Dragons was about killing monsters, leveling up, and powering up. And if that's and they are weirded out by funny voices. And those people, right? They're like, oh yeah, I like killing the monsters, but I don't want to do funny voices. And then there are also people that were tired of the argumentation with the rules, whereas the video game does the rules adjudication for you. So now we're in a situation where there are people that just prefer to play the video game version. And there's probably more of them because video games, you don't have to read a bunch of books. you can play it at your convenience. If it's a MMO, you could get together with your friends at your own convenience. But for the VTT, it's in this different place. You know, you got the video game here, you got Dungeons and Dragons around a table here. We already have Fantasy Grounds, we already have Roll20. There are ways to play Dungeons and Dragons. So what is the Dungeons and Dragons VTT going to give people that Baldur's Gate cannot? And just for the audience, it was developed by Larian, which is a different company than Wizards of the Coast. It's a they jobbed it out, right, to another company who hit it out of the park.
Yeah, I would keep going, and then I want to talk about that for a second, but you keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you like video games, Baldur's Gate does it better. And if you like sitting around the table, you already have a table. And you already have Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 to do that. So I don't know where the VTT fits in. And now it's going to be compared to Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, I mean, now it's funny, as we're talking about it, I just realized it's going to both save, Baldur's Gate 3 will both save Dungeons and Dragons and might destroy them at the same time, because this game is so incredibly well done that their VTT is going to look like garbage in comparison. There's no way for it to compare. It's impossible.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting, though, is that like all of the engine, the mechanics, like the game engine itself is already developed. So how much more effort would it take to create a level building environment and just like strip all of the NPCs out of, strip all the NPCs out of the game and game world and say, here's your save state for your own, build your own storyline, go ham. And then add in a multiplayer version, or like add in a multiplayer backend engine. Like, I don't think that would take much more than a year of work as like an actual proper product. I would be shocked if it takes more than a year in order to deliver that to market.
I guarantee they have a back-end builder to create their own worlds.
Already.
Yeah, that's pretty standard. I guarantee they did this. And there's like a dungeon builder in there. And a train builder and everything that you like, basically the tool set to do this. I guarantee that's in there because that's what they did.
So the question is can they just step on top of the VTT and provide that as a service right now? Like, well, that would be hilarious.
Well, here's where it gets really, really, really interesting. Okay, so Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, BioWare created, and then they went away from it basically because they were paying royalties. And, they didn't own it. So they created their own games like Mass Effect, which they owned 100% of. Because why do you want to pay 10% or 20% of your royalties to someone else when you keep coming out with these fantastic games? And Larian came out with Divine Divinity 1, which, by the way, is absolutely a masterpiece. If you look at the reviews, these games had ridiculous reviews. Divine Divinity 2, absolute masterpiece. This also was in the high 90s of reviews. Like, these games are incredible. And the engines were done. Like, this 3D engine they're using for Baldur's Gate 3 is done. They had to update it and change it and add spells and stuff, but otherwise the engine's done. So they've been spending 6 years, 400 programmers. I figured it out. So we'll say about 25,000 man years of time was spent creating this game.
How many programmers was it?
400 people. So they have about and the first two games they created with 50. So they have, and that's programmers. They have 2.5 million words of dialogue. They have, 174 hours of video of cutscenes. Like, this game is insane. It is ridiculous how big and complex this game is. And here's the crazy part. You pay for it, you get the game. All right, this is how true to D&D it is. There's no expansions. There's no downloadable content. There's no paywalls. There's no copy protection. You just pay your money and you own everything. That's it. Which is also like
That's the way Vecna intended.
Exactly. It's like whoever ever heard of that before? Which is so. This deal was set up probably 7 years ago. 6 to 7, obviously 6 to 7 years ago. The people who are running Hasbro are not the same people that are running Hasbro now that were running Hasbro 7 years ago. It was a completely different set of... Everything was different. D&D 5.0 was just starting out 7 years ago. It was just starting to get a foothold. It was just starting to take off and get kind of popular. And this is a license deal where they basically gave it to Larian and said, here you go. They probably approved aspects of it, but otherwise Larian's like, yeah, we'll do it, and we'll give you like somewhere between 5 to 10% of sales, and that's it. And I guarantee in the next investor meeting, you better believe Hasbro's going to be going crazy, saying how great this is, how amazing it is. Of course
they are.
Yeah, but they had little to nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. It's a license deal.
I've been watching your chat, and MR Blawface sent you a super chat, Steven.
Oh, I know. We're look at what's it say. Hasbro's a big company.
Yep.
Couldn't they have bought a popular VTT or company and then build something from the ground up? They did. They built D&D Beyond for $142 million.
I think they should have either acquired Foundry or not Foundry, Tailspire, the 3D engine one, and merged it with D&D Beyond. I think that would have been the right business move.
Yeah, I mean, it's stunning that they're sitting back, and they also said publicly they're going to make more money from this game than they did in all of their other entertainment ventures outside, for D&D for like the past 5 to 10 years. That was a couple of days ago. This thing is still selling like hotcakes and doing amazing. They're probably going to make more money on this just in royalties than they will on D&D this year. I think they're going to make more money.
They'll be able to climb out of the hole they dug themselves into with the movie.
You know what? Yeah, they put a $25 million write-off. Let me tell you, if that movie made $1 billion, they would have had a write-off. They always write off. It doesn't matter. There's no amount of money that movie could have made that they wouldn't have had a write-off of some sort. They had a small write-off, and $25 million is really not that much for them. If anything, it was a wash. Like, it didn't do what they wanted to do. They didn't kill them either. But the point is that here's this game, and I think, as you said, it's like WotC I think it's going to help everyone learn the rule set and want to play D&D. But then what happens next year? Are they going to buy the rules and then try to play the game? Are they going to download the VTT and say this sucks in comparison to the Baldur's Gate 3, which is going to is mind-bogglingly good?
I think what's going to be really interesting is that Baldur's Gate 3 is built on the actual 5th edition. And there is going to be, like, the vast majority of CRPG players obviously are not going to switch over to play tabletop. But there is going to be, it's just a matter of numbers. There is going to be a crossover group that gets introduced to the game, and, probably something like 5-7% of the players. And they're going to try and start an actual D&D game at the table. And they're going to go to the Barnes & Noble because it's an impulse purchase. They're going to do it that same day. And they're going to, invite their buddies over that evening. And they're going to get their hands completely covered in nasty, flaming hot Cheetos. And they're going to crack open the book and realize that the new 5.5 edition is not the same as what it was in Baldur's Gate 3. And it's going to screw them.
And now this is a weird thing. It's like it's so good for the hobby and so good for WotC, and yet so bad because it's like Great. We got everyone learning 5th edition, the old version of 5th. We got everyone playing this game that's no one, even other AAA studios, are complaining because they're like, we can't make games like this. Don't expect our games, our $250 million AAA games, to be as good as this game. So do you really think the VTT is even going to come close to this? I mean, do you have any, Professor, do you have any idea? Like, man, I can't even, the calculations going in my head now of all the permutations of, like, they must be thrilled and horrified at the exact same time over there in Hasbro.
I think I'd be horrified if I were a game designer over at Hasbro, because now this is another thing. Like the episode we did just a couple of weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
their sales figures are going down
Mm-hmm.
for Dungeons & Dragons supplements.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, at some point in Hasbro is a major corporation. They're going to look at what is most profitable. And they're going to look at Baldur's Gate.
Mm-hmm.
And they may look at the VTT. And they're going to see the least profitable are going to be the books.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you wonder how long we have before there are no Dungeons and Dragons books, and it goes completely online. And to have people design adventure supplements, it takes a lot of concentration. Like I've written modules and for Dungeon Magazine, it takes a lot of time and effort. And if that switches over to video games, what are those designers going to do? And I could imagine a world. I'm interested to hear what you think of it, Stephen. In the same way, Games Workshop spun off Warhammer, and you just got Warhammer.
Mm-hmm.
You just got Warhammer Fantasy, and now it's Cubicle 7. That IP has been spun off. The Warhammer game, fantasy role playing, was very successful in the 1980s. It was not a failure. It was hugely successful, but it was a minuscule amount of the business Games Workshop was doing. Their money came from paints and miniatures.
Yep.
And they had this big staff of role-playing game designers. They cut them, right, moved them onto into the fantasy miniature game. And they spun off that license to Hogshead and then Black Industries, which who worked for them? Chris Pramus and Jeremy Crawford was the lead designer of Warhammer's 2nd edition. Then they spun
I did
that.
not know that. That's interesting.
Oh, and Robert Schwab. So Chris Pramus of Green Ronin, Robert Schwab Entertainment, Shadow of the Demon Lord. They worked on the 2nd edition of Warhammer. Then we had the 3rd edition by Fantasy Flight. Now we have it, Cubicle 7, which has some of the original designers working on it. But they spun it off. I can see a world where the D&D books are contracted out to another company, and they just let those people go.
Well, they did contract them. Remember, the first adventure was done by, who was that, Kobold? Who did the first, the Dragon Queen adventure?
Was that done by Kobold Press?
It was not. It was published by WotC, but it was not written by their internal staffers. It was externally developed. I mean, that was pretty well known. Like when D&D came out, their team in 2014 was like it was so small. I mean, it was like maybe a dozen people or maybe 24. I don't know. And most of those were marketing and other things. Like it was just a very, very, very tiny team. And that's why they only came out with like 2 adventures a year. They basically were outsourcing the adventures to other people to write and do them. And then, they would do the rule set, of course. And then eventually they started to bring in their own people because it was getting more popular and they wanted more control over it. It was Kobold Press. Kobold originally did the first adventures. And then they continuously did that for a couple of years where they had outside people doing the work. And, that's no big deal. Like Paizo does the same thing. Paizo, and it's well known. It's like, Paizo products are written by freelancers. They have internal people who actually do the game mechanics and the producing of the books, but external people actually do it. WotC is moving over to a system where everyone's internal and they don't really use freelancers as much. But the thing is, they just canceled. So I don't know if you know this, Professor, but like 2 years, maybe a year ago, they had like 4 games in development, and WotC canceled all of them. They just were all canceled simultaneously. So they were going down this route, and then they decided to cancel it. So I don't know what the heck is going on over there, because it takes a long time and a ton of money. So they were going down this route, probably thinking, the D&D movie will do great, or whatever they're thinking. And the D&D movie did okay. It didn't do terrible, but it didn't do great either. It did fine, which is like probably the worst of all worlds. And now they're seeing Baldur's Gate 3 becoming a monster, and they're like, oh, now what? Because even if they start development now, these games aren't coming out for another 3 to 5 years, so they can't just start up development of new video games. It takes forever for these things to get made. So they have to put all their eggs in one basket, and that's the VTT basket. And hopefully people move over to it. I don't know. I just can't see how they can really make money on this and the only way I can see them making the money they want to make, quite frankly, is that they turn Dungeons and Dragons. They do 2 things. They either start licensing it out more frequently, which they're already doing. They're starting to license things out. I mean, you've seen the Hot Pockets. The Magic the Gathering Hot Pockets. You didn't see that?
I want to get a Magic the Gathering Hot Pocket now.
Yeah, there's Magic the Gathering
delicious.
Hot Pockets. This came out just a few months ago. Look it up.
I want a lightning bolt and a fireball Hot Pocket. I gotta Google this right now.
No, it's the Planeswalkers that are on the Hot Pockets.
That's lame.
But you can look it up. There are hard. They did really weird co-branding with and obviously Magic the Gathering's doing co-branding with like the Lord of the Rings sets and all these other things.
Hot diggity. Pepperoni pizza. Where is there? There's not. Oh, I want a Dritsterdam Hot Pocket.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't see how they're going to make money unless they turn D&D into a absolute, subscription-based service where there's 1 million microtransactions. Then they'll make their billions of dollars. I mean, Magic the Gathering is basically that in paper form, if you think about it. I mean, it's basically a microtransaction service where you're buying cards. And boy, they're getting expensive. Have you seen like some of those new decks are like 50, 100 bucks? They're crazy. I was like,
crazy.
They're just keep raising the prices. I'm like, this is cardboard, right? I'm like,
yeah. We got a lot of
super chats.
Big Kids says, is the dying comic industry to movie relationship going to be the same for D&D or tabletop in general to digital/AI?
I have thought of that.
Okay, you go.
I have thought about that. So, like when I was a kid, you went to comic book convention, and there were comic book writers. It was like and artists. There's John Byrne. There's Neil Adams. Like those were your, that's what you want to see. Now comic book conventions are all about press conferences for movies. And the comic book sales have gone off a cliff. So I can imagine a world where Dungeons and Dragons exists not as a game. Like Disney, they don't care, and their subdivision Marvel Entertainment, they don't care about the comic books anymore. They have to keep those comic books in print so they can keep their trademarks. But they're all about the movies and the television show. If you ask people Marvel, they're talking about what's on television. And it's also a totally different audience. It's a probably bigger audience. Comic books. There are comic books. I'm not going to get into which ones, but there are Marvel television shows that they're comic books that they're based on. In a month, they sell what one of my Dungeon Craft videos gets in views in a day.
Wow.
All right. So like
Oh,
it's dead. It's dead, and the people that like comic books aren't happy with them. So I can imagine Dungeons and Dragons going that way, where it's all about a VTT, and there always be aficionados who like the pen and paper game, but they just move away. And Dungeons and Dragons would still exist in conventions. We went to Gen Con. Those rooms are packed for dungeon crawl classics. And Shadow Dark raising record money. People want to play those games, and they're variants of Dungeons and Dragons. So the game will always exist. But the VTT, I think, is where Wizards of the Coast will be, and they will no longer really care about the game in its print form, is my feeling.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that the VTT is going to hold it out, because they're going to see how much money they're spending on maintaining the VTT and how much money Baldur's Gate 3 is making. And they're just going to do the same thing that Disney is doing with their extended universes. It's just, oh yeah, make another Mando. Oh, make a Mando spinoff. Oh, make a spinoff of the spinoff. It's like just a total. Yeah, I mean, I'm completely bitter and bored of all of the IP spinoffs that we've been experiencing for the past 20 years. There are a full legal adults that are alive that today that did not experience the first Avengers movie, or even the first Iron Man for that matter, which blows my mind and reminds me of how old I'm getting. But
You're old.
Yeah, I know. What does that say about you two if I'm old?
Oh, well, you don't want to know what it says about us, because I heard a really good joke. Professor, you'll like this. The year is 1989. Michael Keaton's Batman is ruling the box office. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade just came out, and everyone's experiencing what it's like to adventure with Indiana Jones. The year is 2023, and Michael Keaton's Batman is in the movie theaters, and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is in theaters. I'm like, wow. It's like, really? It was just funny. It's like everything that happened in 1989 that's how much they're trying to grasp onto the past. So the year 2023, they're still trying.
30 years later, they're still, and the only option they have, because Harrison Ford is so old, is to just make him look like a haggard old man.
I know. So in a weird way, you are experiencing my childhood.
Oh, that's so sad.
Because it's never leaving.
Well,
great. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
What I was going to say is, I've often said this on Patreon and in my live chats and stuff like that, and my monthly lectures on Patreon. I talk about how Disney is in the curation stage. They don't really create anything. They remake everything. It's just one remake after another with very little original content. And that's what Disney does. They curate a brand and they make sure it stays in the public consciousness. And what Wizards of the Coast is doing, that their best sellers, they just announced the Giants book. That's their best-selling stuff, is all stuff. It's Ravenloft, right? It's Ravenloft. It's Forgotten Realms. It's the Giant stuff. It's Saltmarsh. Everything is a callback and a remake to what has already been done. And they're in that vortex of curation and not creation. And well, everyone will get new stuff, but based on the old stuff, so that's where we're at, I think. Steven?
Yeah. I mean, we have another super chat. It actually says rip post for $10.
Where are these super chats?
Oh, they're in there. If you look at the chat,
you gotta go onto the live stream chat.
If you go on the live stream,
on my phone.
Go to the live
yes,
stream.
on your phone
I'm gonna
or
do
on
that
your
on
computer. Yeah, I have an app, so I see everything. By bringing in the Microsoft leadership team, they're committing to turning into a subscription service, i.e., turning players into tenants in the environment they won't shift course. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, we've been saying this all along, is that right now, where everything is going is people used to have brand loyalty, but brand loyalty is not enough. I can do a whole topic on this, and it's probably you too, Baron, is that brand loyalty is not nearly enough anymore. Now they're trying to get you into systems. And that's why they're trying to get you into walled gardens. It's like when you get if you get an Apple phone, you're probably never leaving. You're Apple forever. You're never leaving. You're Apple for the rest of your life. That's why they're even fooling around with this in cars, man. Like they're even fooling around with subscription models in cars so that you keep buying the same type of car. So you keep your subscription.
The first iteration of that was OnStar. It's like, can you subscribe or push the button to talk to roadside assistance? You know,
they were fooling around with that in South Korea, where you subscribe for like your heated seats, and people went insane. But you know what? It's only a matter of time, because I remember when people went insane when they had advertisements in the movie theaters before the movies. Professor Dungeon Master remembers that. Remember that it was like an uproar when that happened.
People were throwing popcorn and soda at the screen.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
I've never known a world without advertising before a film.
No, there was a world without it, and people loved it.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That's wild.
I know, it's wild and crazy, the world we used to live in.
I mean, I see just, and I know you do too, Stephen, but I work in IT, and just like in the past 15 years watching us move into, and it's like, besides cars, besides whatever it is that like, at what point are we going to wake up one day and realize that we didn't make a subscription payment for our front door lock plus, and now we can't lock our damn door on the front of our house because we didn't pay the Schleg subscription?
There's that movie. It's not a good movie, but there's a movie about that. It's actually pretty bad. It's like it's that you actually it's a science fiction movie. I'm sure someone will remember it. It actually had some pretty big stars in it, but it was about people who you had to pay payments on your organs, like as you got them, if you got like major surgery, and if you didn't pay your payments, they come and repossess your organs and basically kill you. And it's just like,
that's so dystopic.
Yeah.
And real at the same time.
It's just a matter of time, man. It's like they're getting too good at it. But that's the thing, is that they're trying to lock you in. That's what the VTT is all about. It's like we keep talking VTT, walled garden. All they're trying to do is they're going to try really, 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 really hard to make it so that you pay $9.99 a month to get all the D&D content and to use their tools. And
incrementally charge you.
Yes, a little
99 cents for that skin and that treasure pack and that spell pack and that dragon pack and all these other ridiculous packs. And then once you realize you're $50 in the hole 6 months later, now you're never going to play Shadow Dark. Now you're never going to play Traveler. You're never going to play Shadowrun. All these other cool games out there. You're never going to try Dragonbane. I want to try Dragonbane, by the way. It looks cool.
Yeah, Dragonbane, the D&D of Europe.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's the future they want. And they want that future because that's how you monetize it and make $1 billion a year forever and just keep making more money. And then you're right, Dan, or Professor, sorry, is that you can actually then outsource content because, okay, we have the engine, we have the subscribers, we got other people to make these adventures. These things are hard, they don't need to do it. They don't, and it's not actually a bad model. In a weird way, it's not a bad thing what they're trying to do. It's just turning D&D into something it's not. It's not going to be a role-playing game anymore. It's going to be a weird hybrid of video game / VTT / I don't know what it's going to be.
I don't know. It's weird. We missed a super chat.
I saw that one. Yeah,
Actually, great role playing Debbie.
Yeah, they've been around.
Said, should we be worried about this being too good? The Call of Duty effect. Everyone wants to be Call of Duty. I think that's what COD means.
Yes.
Do hope that there's a Pathfinder 2 CRPG.
It's 100% going to destroy. Not destroy. It's like I've already heard my friends in the video game world. So my background is video games before this, and I used to work with Blizzard and stuff. So they're pissed, but they're not. They're both happy and pissed because right now this is think of it this way. Think of it. There's a pie, okay, and you only have, we'll say, I'm just gonna make up a number. You have 20,000 years of manpower, woman power, person power to build out a video game. So how much of that is going towards the game? But a lot of these people who try to do live services or things like, okay, well, we have to build a storefront. Okay, so that takes time. We have to build the infrastructure. We have to build the transaction system. We have to build like all these materials that have nothing to do with game design. So you're spending maybe 50% of that time on building or more on the transactional engine behind the scenes. And then the game is like 50, 40, 30% of the time. And that's it. Larian.
If you look at like something like Fortnite, where all they had to do was nail the game loop, and they have what? How many? I've never played Fortnite, but I know they have like a few battle royale maps, right? Like all they had to do was nail the game loop. How much effort does that actually take to nail the gameplay mechanics for the game loop? And the rest of it is just microtransactions. And it's a cash cow that has led to over 100,000 divorces in New York State.
I think
there was a sociology academic paper I read where they analyzed going back 5 years since Fortnite was released, something like over 100,000 divorce proceedings cited the word Fortnite in the captured words in court as a reason for the divorce.
Can you do a search and see how many of those say Dungeons and Dragons in it?
Oh, I should find out what data set they used and look that up. That'd be great.
That would be such a good. You got to bring me on that. I want to be on that. Don't do that on your own.
No, if I figure out where I saw that, it was a couple of years ago. If I figure out where I saw
that, would be so interesting to see how many divorces because of
10,000 divorces a year caused by D&D.
That's a good headline.
Professor Dungeon Master even has a video supporting this idea.
Professor Dungeon Master, it's like Professor. He could be like, "Are you going to be divorced? Here's 5 tips of how to avoid pissing off your spouse."
I have a video called "I Dumped Her for D&D," and I did have a girlfriend who just wasn't interested, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. This can't go anywhere. My wife plays. If she didn't play, I know other people can make it work.
Yeah,
to me, how.
Well, I don't know how. My wife doesn't play any of this stuff, or my kids either, for that matter. It's kind of annoying, but it's fine. I was back in the day. I was much more into movies, and so we would see a lot of movies together and go to and be on like movies and food. So as long as you had a couple things in common, I think it's fine. But yeah, the gaming. She always asks me because I play my game weekly online. She's like, "Are you doing your gaming thing?" I'm like, "Yes."
Gaming thing.
I was like, "Are you playing your game?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm playing my game." You play your game tonight? Yes, I'm playing my game tonight.
I think just being asked that question with that tone would be grounds for a divorce for me. Like, clearly we do not see eye to eye on how important this is. I haven't played D&D since Gen Con, and I'm like,
you're jonesing.
I'm wigging out. I need my fix. It's weird.
I was gonna play my Pathfinder game last night, but then one of our players is a lawyer and he had to stay late, so we had to cancel at the last second. But yeah, I haven't played Pathfinder in a couple weeks now. Now I think about it. But that's okay, because I'm still playing D&D. I'm playing it in Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, I'm on a Linux machine, so I can't play it.
Yes, you can.
Apparently, Steam runs it.
Yeah, Steam runs Linux. Steam's on Linux.
Okay, all right.
You can run it. There's no excuse.
Yeah, the developers, because apparently, what am I? An influencer sent me a game key. I haven't even tried it.
What?
How mad is the chat going to be?
Someone should give Professor Dungeon Master a game key, and we got to get him into it too.
Oh my gosh, that would be great.
Wait,
can we all
wait?
Professor
I got a
try
better
to
one.
play?
I got one better. You can play it 4-player at a time. You can play it simultaneously. It's like a real game.
Oh,
Professor,
really?
yes.
Yeah.
You can all play it at once. And you can roll your own character, and then you can play multiplayer, and it works seamlessly. So we can all play together. We just got to get a fourth. Get Kelsey.
Of course, Professor's like very anti 5e. So I don't know.
So it's actually pretty well. You know what? I'm not anti 5e, but the way they implemented it is so much fun that even if you don't like 5e, in a weird way, seeing how they do it, like seeing how they do things like, like those magic missiles, let me tell you, when you're casting magic missile and it actually does the little, like, goes up, it's like a rocket. It goes up and, like, centers and, like, zips out at them. And you're like, yeah, it's like the spells are really well done. Like, you just, the lightning bolt, forget it. You're like, it's like thunder cracking down, destroying everything in sight. And you're like, oh, it's really good.
See, that's what I'm talking about. When I go back and watch the demo of the VTT, and it's like, ooh, we can put the figure on top of the roof.
Right.
Ooh, there's a little fireball, and it's just like it's like a fireball. It's not that impressive.
It's not cool. And like the melee weapon attacks, it's like the animated figure like pops up and then like taps forward and then sits back down. Like, that's lame. Like, at least make it animate and swing the axe or something.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't worry, I'm not doing any spoilers. Everything I'm talking about is general, and everything I'm talking about you get within the first hour of the game. Like, nothing is. I'm not talking about spells. Everyone knows what the spells are. I'm talking about nothing I'm talking about will spoil the game. Trust me. But it is. There's a visceral feel to it when you. Oh, and you forgot about the dice. That's the best part. Is every time you roll, like, you literally roll the dice, and then you get to decide if you want guidance or not. And then you're like, oh, of course I want guidance. You add little guidance, and then it rolls the d20, and it adds your ability score, and then it adds the guidance, and and it's like, it goes in too. It goes ding, 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 success. Or it says ding, 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 failure.
It feels like it's a slot machine, really.
Oh,
yeah.
It's so good. It's really good. And then the better is when you have advantage, and then it is the 2 dice, and you're like, yes, and you press them and it rolls both, and then the better one comes forward, and you're like, yes. You can even change the color of your dice, too. And let me tell you.
Wait, can you change the color of your dice for less than $9.99? Like
it's free. It's completely free.
What kind of a macro transaction is that?
Wait.
A different skin on your dice.
There's more. There's more. This is why I said Larian. So Larian Studios, when they came out with Divine Divinity 1, which they kickstarted, by the way, that's how little money they needed to come out with this game, which was like absolutely fantastic. A year later, they said, you know what? We listened to everyone's comments, and we added thousands of new features to the game and dozens of hours of new content and completely redid the game for free. Here you go. They just did it. And then they did the exact same thing for Divine Divinity 2. And guess what they're going to be doing for Baldur's Gate 3, I guarantee.
Well, I mean, how long is it going to take before we start seeing Polygon articles saying this is going to be the modding community will turn this into the VTT,
Since you said it, I expect by tomorrow. Yeah, that is the thing, is that it is ripe for modding, and because it's so popular and because it's a PC game. See, it's not a console game that was ported to the PC. This is a PC game ported to the consoles.
Right.
So this thing's heart and soul is PC. And they are oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, the twin cast. There's a lot of Divine Divinities. I'm talking about Divine Divinity Original Sin 1 and Divine Divinity Original Sin 2. This company makes a lot of games called Divine Divinity, so it can get a little confusing, but those are the actual names. But the point is that they're coming up with a patch. In fact, like any day now, they said, "Oh yeah, we're coming up with a patch with 1,000 new improvements." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" It's like that's why everyone's so like they're like, please stop, Larian. Please stop. You're making us look bad.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it.
So I'm just jotting things down. How much do you think that this has to do with a corporate culture, though? That Larian, like, they've got a group. They're obviously focused. They love the game.
Yes.
Right. Whereas what the VTT is doing is they're taking an already existing group of game designers and importing designers that never worked on D&D before, and they're building it. And they have to be in sync with each other. The people that are building 6E have to be in sync with the designers of the VTT. And this is a company, Wizards, that's never had a successful VTT. So you really have two separate corporate cultures there, whereas Larian, it's all in-house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another reason why I think the VTT may not be all that it's gonna people expect.
Well,
what's your thought on that?
Well, Larian, if you want to see, everyone at Larian loves gaming. The CEO loves gaming, and they had about a month ago, but when they had a big conference, they flew all these people out to a castle, and they gave their conference over. It was like a 6-hour demonstration of Baldur's Gate, and they were all wearing medieval costumes. The CEO was in full armor. I mean, you're talking, these guys are as hardcore as, I mean, they are really into this. And they also put us through 3 years of playtesting. And the way it works is that there's these like core characters you interact with, and they have very detailed stories that becomes your party. And one of the characters people didn't like during the playtesting. They didn't like it, so they completely rewrote his story from the ground up and re-recorded all of his lines. Like, that is how dedicated they are to making this game fantastic. Their heart and soul is in this game. Is anyone else going to be doing that? I mean, the people
no way.
I mean, we were at Gen Con, and we heard that there was people at I forgot, were you guys with me when I was talking to someone? It was that Sunday. It was that big party on Thursday with all the YouTubers, where we were saying that some of the people who were actually at the summit, and they said that some of the suits there from WotC were there, and they were asking them if they wanted to play a game of D&D with them, and they're like, no. Politely declined, saying, no, not really. So, like, the people at WotC at the highest level, some of them, obviously the gamers and the game designers, they all play D&D, and they're big into gaming, and they all come from gaming backgrounds. A lot of them come from Paizo, and they're all love gaming. But these people at the highest levels, they're all from Microsoft and video game worlds, and they don't know the product at all.
No, they have no idea. That was a big complaint. What was it? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when Altifox Investment Group put out that newsletter, basically saying, like, get rich or die trying, yo, and we think you're about to die trying, and here's our recommended list of C-suite that you should get. And one of the people all of the people they recommended had some kind of connection or background to gaming. But their top pick was somebody who was a Magic the Gathering Grand Prix winner. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, he's actually a genius. Knows gaming.
Yeah. That was just last year.
It was
just this time last year.
It was just last year. I know, it feels like a million years ago, but it actually was just last year.
Feels so long ago.
It was.
We have a super chat. Great role playing, Debbie says, does this existing make D&D? Does this existing make D&D's VTT job harder? I'd say it does.
Oh,
it makes it impossible.
it's they're going to have to figure out new strategy for how they're going to market this, because how can they compare this, especially the people who are playing this being Baldur's Gate 3 are the ones they're trying to sell the VTT to. And they're going to compare. They're going to compare whether they want them or not. So they're going to have to figure out a way, and they're very late into the game because this thing's coming out next year. They're going to have to say, okay, well, our system is not Baldur's Gate 3, but it lets you do all this. And, how are they going to do that? I don't know how.
What is the VTT going to offer that the modding community can't?
Right.
That's the big question right now.
Yeah.
Good luck. Get over yourself.
Well, they're going to try to, because they're going to wall guard and everything. That's what they're going to do is they're going to say $9.99, you get everything in one system. And then that's their only play at this point. It's just the fire hose method of like, we can give you more content than anyone else, and you'll get everything you need forever. You'll get all the books, you get all the content, you'll get everything for a low, low price. And that's probably their best play at this point, because they will not be able to compare. But, and I see there's a lot of chatting. I'm reading all the chats, and a lot of people saying, well, Baldur's Gate 3 is not really D&D 5, because they made changes. Well, there's not a single game of 5th edition or Pathfinder or any game on planet Earth that's run exactly as rules is written. Everyone changes the game, so I hate to break it to you. It is D&D because they changed it.
I'm even one of those weirdos who's like anti-homebrew, and I still homebrew.
Oh, I hate homebrew because I don't feel anyone knows it better than the developers, and since the developer literally works for me, I know. But I do, Mark and I do have changes that the thing is that what Paizo's genius is they came out with, because they had a lot of alternate rules, they came out with books saying, here's the alternate rules, and you're free to use them. They give permission for people to use them. So if you want to use rules that they have a thing called automatic a bonus progression, which is instead of you magically adding +1 to your armor and your gear, it just levels up with you, so you don't have to worry about it. And a lot of people like it because it's just a faster, cleaner, easier way to do it, and it's very popular. Is it in the official rules? Kind of. It's like an optional rule, but everyone uses it. And there's a lot of optional rules that everyone uses, but not everyone. I don't use it, but it's there. And they give tons of them. All their books, they come out with tons of optional rule systems. So that's something else. Is like, this is an optional rule system that works for this game because it is a video game and they had to make some changes. And it's great because it's for that game. I mean, Professor, you invented your own game because you wanted the game to be different, right? That's where
Deathbringer is my house rules.
Yeah.
It's a stripped down version of Dungeons & Dragons with a couple different mechanics.
Yeah. Deathbringer, which is like, I didn't think first edition D&D was hard enough. I'm going to make it harder.
Yeah.
That's accurate.
It is accurate. And first edition D&D is like death incarnate to begin with.
It's not as deadly as basic D&D.
That's true.
Death at 0 hit points.
Well, basic D&D was basically cannon fodder at that point.
So here's a question. Here's a question about how these developments are going to change existing adventures. So a VTT, or what Baldur's Gate does really essentially is it's a combat game.
No,
that's what it does.
No, there's a lot of role playing. There's a lot of role playing too. But I'll let you keep going. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. There's a lot of choose your own adventures.
It choose your own adventure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not a role playing like my players have had in one campaign. Their characters have grown older and gotten married and have children and like that kind of stuff. But with adventure designs, it's leaning heavily into the combat pillar of the game. And that's fine because that's, I think, what the video game audience wants. And the VTT, what I've been wondering is, how are you going to do a game that is a political intrigue? It is not built for that. They're not building it for that. So it's when you look at these books like Wild Beyond the Witchlight, where it's like, well, we're going to have a path so you don't have to kill anything. That's not going to go down in a video game or a VTT. So that style of adventure, naturally that throughout its history, Dungeons and Dragons has had different styles, right? We had the sandbox, everyone lives in a monster condo and the monsters are waiting to be killed. And then you have Ravenloft, right? Ravenloft was groundbreaking. Now every villain has a tragic background and there's all stories behind it. And that story mode has been what's been driving D&D since then. Now it's going to go back to combat, or am I wrong? Am I wrong with that?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. Like because I mean, with a VTT, how do you demonstrate, outside of combat, because it looks so much like a turn-based RPG or something like that. It just feels right to do it that way. So the moment you start trying to do funny voices, air quote, like, unless there's really interesting and easy streamlined abilities of like focusing the camera angle for all players involved on one particular miniature model's face in the VTT, and doing voiceover and hot swapping between multiple character models, almost like a Zoom call, in order to have interesting dialogue. Like, how like in gallery view in Zoom, you have like one person's that's speaking and it automatically switches to the next person that's speaking. Like, unless we have technology like that, which, I mean, to be quite frankly honest with you, I'd be extremely skeptical that they're going to have built in and it actually be user friendly enough for a 12-year-old to use. Like, I don't see how you're actually going to get the role-playing pillar in a VTT. You're not going to get the exploration, because outside of like, algorithmically generating the entirety of the Forgotten Realms, or at least the Sword Coast, like outside of doing that, I don't know how you're going to facilitate the exploration pillar. And even if you did do something ludicrous like that, like, do you really want to sit there and march your little figure for 2.5 hours across, taking it the whole way from Baldur's Gate to Neverwinter, the 2.5 hour walk at 30 feet every 6 inches, or 30 feet every 6 seconds? Like, that's entirely boring. So the only thing that's left that is going to be remotely entertaining is the combat. And after Baldur's Gate, how can you compete with that with a model that just like pops up a few millimeters off of the virtual table and then leans forward to display a number above it like it's some sort of crappy MMO from the 90s? Like,
Yeah.
Steven, what do you think?
Well, since neither of you played it, I will mention I'm actually playing a bard in my game, and the reason is because there's so many social encounters in this game, and there's so much role playing, but as you say, it's just super advanced, choose your own adventure, but it's still there, and it's awfully fun. But that is not what the VTT is for. The VTT is going to be, like, I use a VTT every week, and when we do the VTT is for combat and for rolls. That's what I use it for. I also do a lot of handouts and like show pictures, but there's a part, like, we've been playing this campaign where they've been doing a lot of role playing recently, and they literally are just looking at a map of the city and just talking, and we're literally just doing this. There's nothing to. It'd be no different than us sitting around a table talking. And there's just occasional dice rolling, but us just talking. And then they get to the combat. So I think they're going to make it very similar. Maybe they'll try to give you some pretty cool environments. They'll be like, I guarantee what they'll do is they'll come out with like 10 to 20 very cool environments. Like, here's an inn, here's a bar with like a fireplace going and like music and stuff. So when you're sitting around talking, you're doing it in a very cool environment. I keep thinking of like The Sims or the basic MMOs of like the 90s and the 2000s, where they started to do that. Like those were nothing more than online chats in a 3D world, and they're going to go back to that. They're going to go back to this online chat in a 3D world, a very cool 3D world, but a 3D world. And then the VTT is going to be there for the crunch. So the things you're talking about, professors, there's the fluff and the crunch. You're familiar with these terms, right?
Sure.
So okay. So everyone uses it. They use it in the development world too. So the crunch is like all the numbers and all the math and the combat, anything that's crunchy, and the fluff is lore, talking, BSing, coming up with silly names and goofing around. That's the fluff. And these VTTs are very good for the crunch, and that's where they're going to make their money. They're not going to make the money on the fluff. They just
so you agree that an adventure which is non-combat oriented, there's no combat in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to really be possible, or would be difficult to achieve.
It'll be possible. It just probably they'll put in one every so often just to have it in there so that people can buy it and have something for everyone. But I bet you that's not going to be one of their big sellers.
It's going to be the lowest rated. It'll be a 2.2 stars.
Well, you never know. Like they'll probably add a lot if they add a lot of good music or some animations or something. I mean, you never know. You'd be surprised. There's ways to make those work. They just I don't know. Yeah.
I'm just skeptical.
I'm skeptical of them making it work, but I know there's ways to make it work because they're going to be obviously trying to monetize. Every decision they're going to make is going to be towards. You see, here's the big takeaway is that every decision that they made when they were making Baldur's Gate 3 was, how do we make this more fun? How do we make this more awesome? How can we just make this the best game adventure you've ever played? And that's why it has a 97% on Metacritic, because they freaking did it. WotC is going to be thinking, how can we sell combat animations? How can we sell spell animations? How can we sell more content for people to buy to support this game? That's the problem. It's that they have a very different perspective. And the problem is that when this game was first made, and even 10 years ago, they were of the mindset of, let's just make a really fun game. Let's just make something that people like to play. And that was the people writing the games, the people running the games, the people at WotC, and that's who was running the company. And it's happened time and time again. The funny thing is, this keeps happening, is that every time they try to inject business and money into D&D, it fails horribly, because it's almost like an anathema to D&D is money. They can't seem to figure it out. And they're trying again. It's like the fourth time.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to monetize paper, rock, scissors. Like it's entirely a folk game. Like it really is.
Well, all it is it's storytelling with rules. That's all it is. I mean, how much money can you make off that? I mean, you can make millions, but can you make billions? No.
I don't know.
Not easily.
Yeah, it's a great video that Ben Milton does, and he talks about that. Does WotC really own D&D? And there's a difference between there's official D&D and there's folk D&D.
Oh, I remember that video. Yeah,
it's a great video. We have a super chat, and Big Kid says, could somebody do like Roll20 and allow third-party content, but have an app and encounter builder like D&D Beyond?
You could. You absolutely could. I think the thing that a lot of people miss is that while it's easy for us to sit here and bash on the development progress of the VTT, it's still a massive undertaking. And all truth be told, they're actually doing a phenomenal job, and they're doing the best job that kind of budget can afford for the quality that they've recruited. And it is extremely difficult for like a smaller startup, like the fact that Roll20 still exists and is still going strong, to me is actually very surprising, but it shows just how loyal a fan base is to the product. It would be really hard to, with a shoestring budget, create a competitor that's going to be at the same tier of quality as what the VTT will eventually be, despite the fact that it's easy for us to sit here and bash.
Well, it's easy.
And, like
Well,
that's a hard truth, you know.
By the way, Questing Beast is here. By the way, Ben's here.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Hey, Ben.
Ben, you should have. You got to get in contact with me. I got to get you on the show. I don't think I have. I can't find you on Discord, so get in contact with me, Ben, and we'll get you on.
Oh, he is there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He's got a little icon and everything. It's everyone's like, it's like, oh, you keep bashing on WotC. You keep bashing, and Professor, you had the same thing. It's like, why do you keep talking about WotC? It's like, well, because they're doing so much right now. It's hard to not talk about them. It's like they did the OGL thing. Now they have the AI art thing. It's like they're in the news constantly. It's like, how can you not talk about them? But they are, for better, for worse, they're the leader of this gaming industry by a mile. And what they do is going to matter, even indirectly. So we need to pay attention to it. And there's going to be a big, big change next year, either through VTTs or through them coming out with 6th edition or whatever the hell they're calling it. And they're keeping it all secret. So all we have is talking about it and speculating, because, you know, look at Kelsey and look at Shadow Dark. She had to put out her Kickstarter. I mean, you guys can talk about this more than I can. Like, she had to put out her Kickstarter as quickly as possible because of that OGL thing. And it worked out great for her. But, like, that affects real people. Like, you know, their decisions are affecting
For sure.
a lot of people. That's why we keep talking about it. It affects me. I put out, you know, products. Like, it affects me big time. It affects both of you indirectly, or directly. I don't know, however you want to look at it. Yeah, so it affects a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, just for me personally, like, the OGL thing was extremely emotionally, and I didn't recognize how emotionally taxing it was until the dust was finally clearing and settled. But, like, getting interviewed by the press, by like 3 different newspapers, being on Canadian broadcasting, like, I didn't realize how much that rattled me to my core. And not only that, but, like, how much real emotional, like, this goes back to when I was a little kid. Like, I have a lot of real visceral emotional attachment to the success and failure of this game. I've endured my head being stuck in a toilet in middle school because I play this game. And it's very very jarring when, you know, it's under monetized.
Well, it's very jarring when it's under monetized, and they're obviously going to make it go into a direction it was never in.
It was never, and likely can't survive long term in.
Right.
That's the most terrifying part.
Or turn into something it's not, which is not. It's not going to be D&D. It's going to be a VTT video game of some sort.
That's what I think is going to happen. That it's
for sure.
And if you look at Chris Cox's comments from last week, he's talking about how D&D is evolving. You know, the VTT is what they think is like they're on this continuum, and the VTT is closer to what it really should be, which is probably virtual reality goggles, and everyone's running around with their friends in, you know, different skins in an alternate environment. Like that's what they think. And it is, but Dungeons and Dragons can never be destroyed because, as Ben says, it's a folk game now. I mean, it is a separate thing. I've always seen it, the VTT, is that it's evolving into a different game. And I think the people that are really going to have to make a decision are people like us, Barron. We're on YouTube. Like, do you cover it? Do you cover the VTT? Like, who's going to go in? Because, you know, every one of the YouTubers at that party is going to have to make that we went to. Right. By the way, thanks, Dungeon Dudes. They got us beer. I love those guys.
They did, yeah.
But everyone's going to have to make a decision. Do you sign up for that VTT for your $9.99 and talk to that audience, because that's the audience? Or are you going to be sitting like Ben Milton at Questing Beast, and he's going to be doing it, you know, the old way? And and it's a big decision. It's a big change.
It is a big, and not only that, but, like, you know, how much of the outside of that kind of walled garden environment can you actually, how many of us as content creators can actually survive outside of that? because like for the most part we've all been like, I know my channel has very, very few 5e centric videos, and part of an open secret of my channel is to try and inject OSR sensibilities into the brain of 5th edition players to try and like bridge that gap. And then Shadow Dark came along and stole my thunder. But which go check out that game if you haven't. It's amazing. But like, if we were all to not do, like, explicitly not cater to 5th edition at all, or WotC, or that ecosystem, we'd all be trying to cozy up in Questing Beasts corner, trying to review some of the most esoteric independent game published stuff. Is there enough ecosystem for us to all do that? Probably not.
Well, Pathfinder.
Yeah, there is Pathfinder.
I mean, that's where most of my content comes from.
Yeah.
Pathfinder, and Pathfinder is the majority for me. I mean, we do 5e as well. I mean, I do news, so I'm like, I do everything, but
right.
But obviously we do a lot of Pathfinder, and Pathfinder. I hate to say it. Do you know the way I discovered Professor is when you bashed on Paizo saying that they were like in trouble. That's how I discovered you. That video. And
I'm still getting crap over that video.
Well, okay, I'm going to defend you once and for all. Okay, I'm going to defend the Professor because I know where that came from. So a lot of that was coming from the numbers from Roll20. So Roll20 used to publish every quarter how many people are playing each of their games. And the games for D&D were going up and up and up, and all the other games were going down and down and down. And like D&D was something like 50%. It was crazy. And Pathfinder was like 1. It was some insanely small number. So people are going, oh, and it used to be higher. It used to be like maybe 6%, 5%, and then it kept going lower. Except the problem is like, well, the pie was getting bigger because more and more people were playing it. So percentage-wise doesn't mean numbers. And second of all, most Pathfinder players, especially now, 98% of them use Foundry. And Foundry is all Pathfinder. So the data set was inaccurate. And also, Paizo was going through some issues 2 years ago. They were definitely had some growing pains. Their upper management changed. Like, there's a lot going on there. They went through, last year they had, or 2 years ago was when they got the union. I mean, there was a lot going on over there. But now, not only are they doing better than ever, and I can go into, I have numbers. I know I'm a partner, so I get private meetings with upper management, and they tell us because they want to make sure that we continue to make content for Paizo, so they tell us how well they're doing. And not only are they doing very well, but they're coming out. They have more and more partnerships every week. I get another email of another partnership they have, and Baldur's Gate 3 was a partnership. That was nothing more than a partnership. Those partnerships are very, very important. And you keep having more and more partnerships and you keep getting the word out, people will start paying attention. So they're doing quite well. And also, they got rid of their offices. That is a massive savings. I went virtual. I used to have an office in Manhattan. I got rid of my office in 2004. And I've been virtual ever since because it was such a massive savings. So, and I think everyone started to realize it. That's why you see everyone saying, come back to the office. Because you're like, we're paying all this rent. It's like,
right.
Start using it. We need you to use it. I'm like, yeah, those offices are going bye-bye. You save much money without an office, I tell you.
But I agree. Pathfinder is doing gangbusters now. It's like, I probably have to make that,
official
that video. Paizo, the comeback of the decade.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. And also, to be honest, do you know why they shrunk the Sagamore, Professor? It wasn't because they weren't doing so well. It's that they were having remember how big Sagamore was, and they were running like hundreds, if not thousands, of tables of Pathfinder. Do you know how hard it is to get that many dungeon masters, GMs for Pathfinder? After COVID, they just couldn't. They couldn't find enough people. They couldn't get enough people to run it. They had to physically make it smaller just so they can run it. They literally, it would have been half empty or 2/3 empty otherwise. So they
there's a game master shortage. Another video that I put out is true.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not even a game master shortage; it's a game master shortage of people who want to. It's even more specific. Game master shortage of people who want to go to Gen Con to run multiple games with lots of people, and all you get is like a free T-shirt or like a free badge or something. If you run a lot of games, you get a free hotel room. But
What do you mean free T-shirt for lots of people?
Oh, so the way it works with Paizo is that if you run games for Paizo, depending on how many you run, they give you either, like, if you run something like 3 or 4 games, they might give you a day pass, so you get like Saturday for free, or if you run certain number of games, you get a full day. Like, I forgot how many it was. It's always different. Like, I'll just make stuff up. Like, you run 6 games, they give you a 4-day pass, but they also give you free T-shirts for every day that you're running, so that you run, like, you get your official GM T-shirts. I have a whole bunch. I got like a stack of them upstairs, so it's the official, Paizo shirt. But if you run, I think it's like 9 or 10 games out of like 12 sessions, so that's like 90% of your time is running games at Gen Con, they give you a free room.
Oh,
but
man.
You got to share the room with 3 other people.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I have a lot of friends who did that. I have a lot of friends. They'd be running games from 7 in the morning to 2 a.m. every day.
Wow.
I had friends that did it too.
Yeah,
that's rough.
It's crazy.
Yeah, if you look on Twitter at Gen Con time, Barron, you'll see that there are different designers who are like, run games for me. I'll give you $30 an hour. Like, you'll see that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Mr. Blawface. By the way, Mr. Blawface said they did figure out how to monetize rock, paper, scissors. It's called Pokemon.
So
true. Actually, touche. But Mr. Blawface, yeah, I don't know what I used to run games. I used to run a lot for Paizo. Then I used to only run the specials, and now I don't even do that. I don't even run the specials. I liked running the specials, but I don't do that. Instead, we have Barron run us through Mothership.
Oh, man.
Where I got to kill everyone.
I hope I wasn't too drunk.
Oh, wait. I killed everyone, but Professor blew up the station and killed everyone. I got infected by ooze and then killed everyone, flying back to Earth. I blew
up myself.
No, there were people on the space station.
No, there were other people.
There was 10 people in the station.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was a horrific disaster.
How horrific was that? You see, I play chaotic characters, and Barron now knows. He's like, so there's like a loader, and there's a dead guy who exploded. He was covered in ooze. What do? I'm like, I go in it, and your face is like, you do what? I'm like, I go in it. He's like, you're going in the ooze-infested dead body loader. I'm like, yeah. And then, what do you know? I became infested. Who knew?
Oh my gosh. No, that was fun.
That's how you got to play it, though, man.
Yeah.
That was a great to paint the picture for those who are playing at home. I found this out of the way room, and Barron ran Mothership, right? And Steven was there. Everyone, Chris McDowell, Into the Odd, the designer, Ben Milton, right, Trevor Duvall of Me, Myself, and Die, Kelsey Dion, Shadow Dark, my wife. Who else am I forgetting?
There was Zarkov, new classical.
Luke
revival.
Was it? Yeah, and was it Luke?
No, Luke wasn't at that game.
Oh, okay, right.
Luke was at the next game.
Yeah,
all right, but that's an all-star lineup, and you can actually see that on Me, Myself, and Die. He uploaded like some footage, so he's got a couple of pictures.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I gotta go watch that.
And Barron was very drunk.
He was, but he might have been better than I am sober at Game Master. Very good.
Well, thank you. That's extremely kind.
But what's cool is it's just so much fun, to be there with so many people, and all of us YouTubers get along. It's nice.
Yeah. No, it was like, I think the most interesting aspect of it was like, that's the first time I've seen so many YouTubers at the same time. Like, and us hanging out, it almost felt like a actual quality. I don't want to even call it like a corporate like a team building exercise thing. But it's like, in a way, everybody is a coworker. We're all a grassroots thing, organization, just doing the thing we love. And it was the first time we had been able to hang out and play games. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I was glad that you got to, because I'm the one who bugged you to run Mothership because I kept caring about it. And then you gave us the worst character sheets in history.
Look, listen, Linda. Look, no, I printed them off. I asked the front desk at my hotel that I was staying at to print them off, and I don't know what brand of paper and or toner that they were using, but just in the 15-minute walk from the hotel to the hotel we were gaming in, from my hotel to the hotel we were gaming in, like the toner from the laser printer had just started rubbing off on all of the character sheets, and if you put your hand on it and lifted your hand away, you got half the character sheet on your hand.
That's right.
It was so bad.
It was like Mission Impossible that your character sheet will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Mr. Blobface, he was saying, so he was a Pathfinder 2 GM this year. If you run 7 games for Gen Con 2023, they give you a hotel room with one other person. Saw a post back in February. Okay, so you're right. I didn't know that. I'm talking about when I did it. I'm talking, that's like 10 years ago. As Seth Lipton, he used to run it, and it used to be a lot more games, and you shared with 3 other people, and they pay for that. But I think it was a combination of they wanted to get more people, so they lowered it to 7 games, and also B, because of COVID, you only had to share one with one other person, and that alone is also makes it harder for them to get good GMs because it costs more for them because they have to pay for all those hotel rooms, and it adds up. They have to pay for the badges, and this is a lot of GMs. Like, there's a lot of GMs because they run games in the heyday. They were running games 24 hours a day. They actually had a block from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. for like shift workers, and it was incredibly popular because there's a lot of people who have to work, third shift. So they were very happy because they're like, I'm awake, this is great. And it was one of the most popular blocks they ever did. And they were literally running games 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4 days during the Gen Con. And that was back in the real peak. But like Paizo, COVID has changed things in lots of ways that people don't understand. Like, they used to not force, but they used to kind of force. Everyone from Paizo would go to Gen Con. Everyone. It was, almost no one stayed back. Now they can't do that. They legally can't force you. They can strongly recommend and ask you to go. And a lot of people didn't go. Jason Bowman doesn't go anymore. There's a lot of people, and Zaze Palmer doesn't go anymore. Mark Seifter, he didn't go either. He doesn't work for Paizo, works for me. He didn't want to, he didn't want to go. He didn't feel comfortable. That's fine. I can't force him. I'm not going to. So, it's a different environment. But pre-COVID, everyone was there because they could semi-force them to go. But
and this year I can say, because I went before COVID and last year, and this was probably the biggest Gen Con ever. I mean, it was huge.
It was big. It was big.
Overwhelming. It was so, like, just for people in the chat who have not been to Gen Con, just to recant very quickly my initial impressions as my first time going. Like, I video called my wife the second morning because she stayed at home. She doesn't do huge crowds. I mean, I'm an extroverted person, and I told her, I was like, showing her on my phone all the different hotels, the train station, everything. Like, I was like, this hotel and this hotel and this hotel and this hotel and that train station and the Indianapolis Colts Stadium and half of the shopping mall's thoroughfare. Yeah. All of that is gaming, nonstop gaming. And I said, if I didn't know a few people here that were my friends, I'd probably just be sitting at a table in the corner next to the snack room and just being quiet and people watching, because it was so, and I'm extroverted, like I'm very gregarious, and it was just so overwhelming to see 80,000 people hack in to these 7 buildings as tightly as possible, like they were sardines, just to play games. It was absolutely insane. I've never experienced anything like it. Like the professor and I went into the merch hall and seeing the line for Lorcana wrap around and the merch hall was probably the size of 3 football fields. Would you agree with that, Professor?
I mean, it's I don't know if it's 3. It was big.
It's definitely bigger than 2.
It's like an airplane hangar.
Yeah, like seeing the line for Lorcana, the new Disney card game, just wrap around the entire situation. Just, it's mind blowing.
That's why
you walk for 10 minutes and you're not to the end of the Lorcana line.
Yeah.
It's insane.
That's why I look forward to it every year, man. It's like unlike anything you've ever been to. And I go to other cons, but they're nothing like that.
Yeah, Dungeons and Discourse, you have to come next year. We would love to entertain you in Indianapolis. Yeah,
that would be great.
This is in the chat.
I'm coming, and I'm coming to Ireland next summer in July before Gen Con. I'd love to meet Dungeons and Discourse.
I've had them on the show.
Yeah, so here's a question. I'm going to bring it full circle.
Full circle. Here we go.
Why are that many people going to Gen Con to play with other people when they could play games on Steam or on a VTT? And the answer is, it is a communion. It is communion, and it can't be replaced. That part of gaming can't be replaced.
Yeah,
VTT can augment it, but it can't replace it.
It's like going to Canterbury if you're Anglican, or going to Mecca if you're Islam. Like it's the thing you must do once in your life, or you can't be properly called a gamer. Like it is a near religious experience to see Gen Con. It's wild.
But let me ask you, because I think, Professor, you're big into concerts, right? You like to go to music concerts.
Yeah, I like them.
See, I'm one of those. So I would say it's a very similar thing. Like, I like music. I like listening to music, and I like going to concerts once in a while. But I don't need to go to a concert to enjoy the music. But I have friends. I have a good friend who not only does he go to concerts. I mean, he saw Taylor Swift all 3 nights at the Meadowlands. I mean, I don't even know how that's possible. I'm like, you can't even see it once, let alone 3 nights. Like, that is ridiculous. But that's the people who go to Gen Con, or the people like us, except for concerts. Like, we want to experience it at the highest level. And, even, yes, is it crowded? Yes. Is it painful? Yes. Are your feet aching? Are you, Professor, you're saying you were sleeping for days afterwards? Like, everyone's like, you're exhausted. It's work. It's fun and work at the same time. But it's worth it. But to me, going to concerts is that, and I don't do it anymore because it's not, I don't need to do it. I don't need to do it. So I think the people who go to Gen Con are the people who want that. They love the fun and the pain.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, I'm not even a napper. Like, I'm the kind of person who cannot nap. And I took a nap the day I got back from Gen Con and slept the following 4 days for more than 10 hours each day. And I'm like a 6-hour a night sleeper. Really? I can't do more than 6 hours. So yeah, it was a lot.
Oh man. I came back, I worked, I did a stream, and I drove 4 hours to Maine. I'm insane. Like, I don't sleep. Everyone knows that about me. Like, I don't sleep. I rarely seem to sleep, and even Gen Con took it out of me, but I also was pacing myself at Gen Con. I also know when my body starts saying, because like at late night it would be like after we gamed, and then I'd be like, I can go back, and because you could like Hall B and check out the gaming, and they've been playing Magic and stuff, and I'm like, 10 years ago, I used to do that and even get into a couple of werewolf games to go to like 4 a.m. But now I'm like, I'm going back and go to bed.
That was another thing that I experienced for the first time was werewolf.
Oh yeah.
Like I've played a few sessions of Vampire, and I just assumed that Werewolf was going to be another RPG, but about werewolves. No, I did not realize it was a social deduction game,
Yeah,
and
it's very different.
it's extremely different. And the professor's son apparently is addicted to it and just disappears into the crowd only to be seen 4 days later bedraggled.
I think next year we all have to play a game with your son, Professor, a werewolf. That would be fun.
Of werewolf.
Yes.
I have another son. He's currently serving in South Korea, but he's another one. He goes for 4 days. And even after the game has shut down, they just keep going. And then he sleeps during most of the day in Gen Con, and he wakes up at like 3. It's
Well, then
crazy.
you had to drag your son out of Gen Con, right? Wasn't he sleeping like on the
He
floor?
was asleep. He was asleep. He was asleep. And when my kids were little, my oldest son, like we were walking, I think on a Sunday, and there was like a windowsill, and like bunched up in this windowsill of this, this random, the second floor of the convention center. I'm walking by, I take a second look, it's my son.
Well, gaming's hard, man. Gaming's hard. Well, the thing is, as much as you did and we did, it's like you still only saw like 0.00001% of Gen Con.
Minuscule amount.
I mean, you see, it's like I talk to other people, and they're like, "What did you do?" And what they did, it was so different. Like, oh, I have a friend. She was doing LARPing, and she became the queen of. She did Vampire the Masquerade, and she won. She became like the queen, and she's telling me all about it. And she was doing it for days. I'm like, I don't even know where that was. Like this is like a whole other world. Everyone's doing their own thing. It's just. Yeah. Like I know another friend, my friend John, who had dinner with us. Like he was going to talks. Like he doesn't even play games. He didn't play a single game. He was there, but he went to talk after talk after talk. He went to like writing. He writes, so he went to a lot of talks about writing and writing structure, and that's all he did. Like he just goes for talks. Cool. And then my friend Bob, he played in board game tournaments, endless board game tournament, one after another. That's all he kept doing. And he said, "Oh man, I was getting killed." He's like, "I thought I was good, and these guys are killing me."
Oh, that's fun.
But it's like all different worlds. Like everyone's doing something different. It's so big. It's so ridiculously big. But you should also. But then you went to. I went to Origins, and Origins is nice because it's small, but it's manageable. It feels like. That's what like the local cons are like is an Origins. So, but now all we can do is wait. Another 50 weeks for Gen Con 2024. That's all I seem to do is just waiting for Gen Con. And now I'm waiting for Gen Con. Yeah.
You don't do any other cons?
Well, no, we have one more we can look forward to, and that's PAX Unplugged.
Yeah, well, I'll be there.
Yeah,
are you
I'll
going
be
to PAX?
There. We all do.
I'm going to be there. Coming. I'll be at Mythicon.
I'll be at Mythicon.
Well, what's Mythicon?
North Carolina.
Oh, when is that?
That is, it's a very small convention in is it Raleigh?
No, it's in Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
Even better. My daughter goes to college down there. I'll go visit her.
My sister lives in Charlotte, and I didn't remember that. Yeah. And so Mythicon it's one hotel, and it's where a lot of the Tabletop Crafters Guild are. So you got like DM Scotty and Wylock and Tabletop Engineer. They go there.
Okay.
That's like their home base. That's an interesting convention. Very small, and DM Scotty is worshipped like a deity.
Well, it's because he is a deity.
Yeah, I mean, like
if it were not for DM Scotty, the D&D YouTube platform, like he was the trailblazer for all things D&D on YouTube.
Yeah.
All hail DM Scotty. But
yeah. So that's there's that one, and then there's PAX, and then I'm always going to these things.
Where I'm looking, I'm trying to find Mythicon. Oh, there's a lot of Mythicon words. All right.
Yeah, Mythicon is this is the one in November.
Yeah, there's one in Asheville that's I think in March.
In the spring. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not going to the one in Asheville.
No.
Mythicon. I gotta find it.
It's very, very small.
Yeah. What would you say? Like maybe 1,500 people there?
Oh, even less
And
than
that's
1,000.
that's even a high guess.
Less
it
than
might-
1,000.
It might be just 800
Oh,
or
I found
so.
it.
Yeah, I would say under 1,000, and it's every con is different. That's very intimate, and there are friends that are you never see everybody at one place. So
Except Gen Con.
well,
No, almost
I mean, even
everyone.
at Gen Con.
Well, it's pretty.
For the
yeah.
dungeon dudes putting that drinking night together.
Well, that was crazy.
I don't think I would have met half of the YouTubers that were there. And
Yeah.
I don't think we even met Dale Kingsmill, but for like 15 minutes in the street one day.
yeah,
Yeah.
we just bumped into her.
Yeah.
There are a lot of YouTubers at Gen Con is centrally located, but I think that Hanker and Fernell and Bob and Nerdarchy guys are going to be at PAX.
Yeah, PAX is good. PAX is, well, it's 2 hours from me. And it's close for us, so it's easy to get to. And it's a good time of year. It's in December. It's early December. I actually kind of like it's cold outside, so you're not walking around in the heat like in Gen Con. It wasn't too bad this year, but some years, oh boy. Some years it was roasting.
Be at the Pittsburgh Gaming Expo. The event organizers invited me to come.
Oh my God, when are you going?
Is that, I think, October 1st?
October 1st.
I told them one of the deals was that I would come do talks, but they had to figure out a place for me to take my wife for our anniversary. So
I lived in.
That's our anniversary
well,
trip.
Talk to me. I lived in Pittsburgh for 5 years.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
and I go there. I go there every year, and half a Roll from Combat's from Pittsburgh and lives there now. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you're gonna have to tell me who to meet up with. I
love Pittsburgh. Love it. Oh, it's in the Monroeville Convention Center. Yeah.
I was invited there. They invited me there, and I can't because I'm teaching school. So they lined me up as well. They lined me up as a guest for when I retire in 3 years. That's how far out I'm booked for some of these things.
Bob World Builder and Grace are going to be there, and he's never been to a con. Bob World Builder, he's going to be on my show tomorrow. I'll ask him about it.
I didn't realize Bob was going. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list here. You're right at the top here, Baron. You're number 3. Yeah, John Riggs.
Gaming
and then you.
I'm looking on their website right now.
You're right at the top. Oh man, I gotta ask them. I want to go. I want to go just to go to Pittsburgh and visit my friends.
Are you looking at the what page are you on?
Featured guests.
Featured guests.
Yes.
Guests. Here we go. Hot diggity.
Look at you.
Look at that.
We've got a lot of people here. Alexander Thomas. Oh my God, this is like a real convention.
Yeah.
Holy moly! And I always have somewhere to stay. I mean, I go to Pittsburgh every year because I'm in a baseball league, and we've been doing our fantasy baseball league for like 37 years, something like that. And we do it in person. We go to Pittsburgh. We all fly to Pittsburgh every year. We all draft our teams in person every single year. And I brought my kids. My kids love Pittsburgh. The food there is really bad for you, and it's so good. It's a different type of food because we had some really good food in Indianapolis. Oh, I finally got to bring. I brought you guys to Harry and Izzy's and St. Elmo's, and I tell you, that hamburger in Harry and Izzy's. Oh my God, that hamburger was so good.
That hamburger's great.
I know.
That's good. Now I want a hamburger.
I know. I'm like, well, there you go. Or the shrimp cocktail.
Yeah. Steve, is this how all of your every episode of Roll for Combat ends with
food?
We're talking about shrimp
food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about food.
Cocktail.
Well, it's turning into a meme. Well, because I was happy that you got to experience it.
It was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely worth it. And if you go to Gen Con, you have to, 1, eat at the Steak and Shake, or at least argue with somebody for a table at Steak and Shake. And 2, you have to go across the street and down the way to get the shrimp cocktail because they grind the horseradish fresh every morning for the chili sauce. That is so good. And it'll clean out your nostrils so fast.
I told you. Well, because every place has unique food. And I like to find the unique food. So if you go to Pittsburgh, there's a couple of unique places like Permanente Brothers and a few others. Like so Permanente Brothers is famous. There's actually chains now, but they started in Pittsburgh and that's where you want to go. They make sandwiches and they put coleslaw and French fries on the sandwich and this amazing bread. And they did it because the truckers used to just want to eat with one hand. So they put everything on the sandwich. So everything's on the sandwich. You just eat it, and that's their thing, and it's incredible. They're so good, the sandwiches. But
That's
you
too
can
much.
only get it there. So every place has, quote, its thing. So that's whenever if you go somewhere, you got to have its thing, and that's its thing. Pittsburgh has a lot of good food in Pittsburgh. A little too much, actually.
A little too much.
Yeah, you get like it's all bad for you too. Put it this way: when you get a salad in Pittsburgh, here's their thing. They're known for French fries. They put French fries in their salads instead of croutons.
I think my wife is listening to the stream. So, are you ready for that, honey? Are you ready for French fries in your
Like,
salad?
the people have, this is my friend, a friend of mine. He works out. He's like gigantic. He's a health nut. And we'll go out. He goes, yes, I like to have the house salad without the French fries, please.
Oh, that's great.
They're like no French fries. Okay. I was like, you actually have to ask for that because that's their thing, man. Every place has their thing. Well, you gotta talk about something at the end. You can't just keep. You gotta how do you fade out? You can't just say goodbye and that's it. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, we got stuck on the runway for 3 hours in Pittsburgh. Yeah. Well, now I gotta go to this con, man. Well, back to your answer. I used to go to a lot. I used to go to E3. I used to go to Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. I used to go to PAX. It's not PAX. I used to go to I go to PAX East, but that's become a nightmare. I used to go to Icon. But Professor, you remember Icon on Long Island? Did you ever go there?
No, never went there.
Oh my God, that was my favorite convention. It was the biggest gaming convention in the Northeast for like 30 years until recently. And it was on a college campus, and the ratio of guests to attendees was like 2-to-1 or like 3-to-1. Like there was like for every 3 guests there was an attendee. Sorry, for every 3 attendees there was a guest. So it was endless guests, like endless, and they got everyone from Marvel, everyone from DC. They got all the best writers. They got all the best scientists there. It was like a who's who of science fiction and fantasy from the Northeast because everyone went. It was excellent. That was my favorite convention forever, and now it's gone forever.
Aw.
I know. It sucks too. it was good. It was like they would have the weirdest guests too. Like they had like half of Mythbusters there one year. Like Mythbusters.
Oh, that's cool.
I know.
That's
It was
super
just like cool,
Yeah.
man. Like, and then they'd have half of Battlestar Galactica right next to them. So you're like, here's Battlestar Galactica. Here's Mythbusters. I mean, they got a lot of scientists. They got Degrassi would be there because he's from New York. So like they would get everyone.
That's mega cool. I'd love to meet.
They
Neil
were right
deGrasse.
there, and they would be all right next to each other. You're like, it was like a
super
hodgepodge of weirdness. It was a great convention because it was close, and they didn't have this convention started in the '80s. So back in the '80s,
Right.
when I was a kid, I'd go to that convention, and now it's gone.
Aw.
I know.
Aw.
Well, Professor's been going. You. What was the oldest convention you ever went to? The oldest convention I went to probably was the New York Renaissance Fair. Does that count?
Oh, I love the New York since Renaissance Fair.
So do
It's
I. I've been going since 1987, and that was its 10th year in existence. It's been around since 1977. It's old, man. I like going. It's in Tuxedo, New York, right by me.
Yeah, I go generally. I went last year.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest convention I went to, I went to Gen Con back in the 80s.
Wow. I was too young. It's like I don't think. I mean, I guess in theory I could have flown out there on my own, but it wasn't something you did back then. You just didn't go fly out on your own. There was no internet.
I did.
I know. I'm impressed. I'm
I did.
impressed. I wish I once the first time I went, I was like, oh, I'm never not going ever again. Like once I went, I said I'm never not going because it was so impressive. I loved it. But this is your first. What conventions? When you're going to be going every year now, Barron? After this,
What's that?
you're
Say
going to
that
be going
again?
every year.
to Gen Con?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I'll go next year so I can cosplay as Deathbringer
Oh,
for the release of the figure, the 28 millimeter and 54 millimeter bust of Deathbringer. This is I have no idea if that's actually happening next year. I'm just claiming self-fulfilling prophecy right now.
that
But
would be great.
I will be the 5'9" version of the Deathbringer model next year.
All right. Well, my brother isn't doing anything right now because all of Hollywood's on strike, so you can talk to him and he'll help you with the costume.
That's awesome.
I spoke to him. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Nothing." It's like waiting for the strike to end. All right. Well, I think we talked this one to death. Although we have to figure out when we're gonna play Baldur's Gate 3 together. That's gotta be funny. You can make Deathbringer, Professor. What class is Deathbringer? Fighter or barbarian?
Fighter.
Fighter. Well, guess what? There's a fighter in D&D.
I figured you would have made him a paladin, to be honest.
Anti-paladin.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. But I mean, fighter works. That's fun.
All right, we got fighter.
Yeah.
What would you play, Baron?
An illusionist.
Well, we got that.
I always play an illusionist if I can.
All right. Are you gonna play illusionist?
Because they don't do anything. Yeah, we play tested the Dungeon Coach's game system that he's kind of working on with the DM layer, and I was playing an illusionist. And finally, I cast Magic Missile in like the 4th round of some larger combat at the end of the game session. And he was like, "You're finally doing something!"
Great. I don't know. Well, if you have a fighter and the magic, I don't know. Well, rogue isn't really. I'd probably play paladin because then you can do everything. You can heal and fight. Sort of a good one.
Or do druid. Druids are like Swiss Army knives.
I do love druids. Druids in Baldur's Gate 3, it's like the one class that isn't done that great, suppose. Like,
really?
None of them are done poorly, but there's definitely some that are a little bit better for the game, if that makes sense. So the ranking is Paladin's number 1 by a mile. And Warlock, I actually played Warlock. I did not like Warlock at all in Baldur's Gate. I'm playing a Bard, and I like Bard because Bard literally can do everything. And they can cast spells, they can fight, they can talk, they can pick locks, they can steal. Like whatever you need it to do, they can do. I'm like, they can sing, they can influence roles, like whatever you want them to do.
They can romance a bear. No, wait, that's the druid.
That's everyone. No, everyone can romance the bear.
Romance a bear. Oh my
Everyone can romance the bear.
Oh Lord!
And don't forget, and this is how realistic this version of D&D is that you get to choose your type of genitalia. There's multiple types in this game.
On that note,
hey man, every version, every D&D game goes to that eventually. Eventually, and that's when you know it's time to call it quits.
Oh man.
Did we learn anything? I think we learned that a lot of people are going to get added to the hobby. A lot of people are going to learn about D&D. A lot of people are going to learn the rules. And that's the good news. The bad news is that this game is going to make the VTT next year really tough for Hasbro because they're going to have to make this thing amazing. And I just don't see how they're
not going to happen. That's an unachievable goal.
It's not going to be as good. I mean, nothing is going to be as good. And unfortunately, it's like an apples to apples comparison because it's like, well, we have a game here that's literally Dungeons and Dragons, and your game is literally Dungeons and Dragons. Why isn't your Dungeons and Dragons as good as this Dungeons and Dragons?
Yep.
Well, yeah, it's going to be a mess. Oh, well. So where can everyone find you guys? Where's Barron?
If you look up me, I am at youtube.com/c/Dungeon Masterpiece. I've got a video that I'm dropping tomorrow, if you want to check that out, about what your starting town needs and how to actually use it to not have a contrived and ridiculously awkward first session.
And Professor, you're just everywhere. You have enough in the
I'm,
can? You got enough videos in the can?
I do have about 8 now.
Oh man.
Yeah, I made.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of painting and crafting videos because people are complaining about all you do is WotC clickbait. So I got some painting, crafting ones, and then I released a new one today called the True Story of Trader Joe, which is about how my players they met a henchman. They hired a henchman called Trader Joe, not Trader, Trader, and hilarity ensues. It's a great episode.
Yeah, it's a good one. I know I told you my story about Never No Hit. Norris No Hit.
Oh yeah.
It's everyone has one of those stories.
Where can we find you, Steven?
You find me here. I'm here. And don't forget, check out Kickstarter at rollforcommon.com. We only have it ends this week. Oh, that's what I forgot to do. I was going to ask you guys to write islands with me, but we can do that some other time. We got time. We got
some time. I've got time coming up here soon. So
yeah. We could do it right here. I was going to have Mark do it with you. You could just he'll freely.
Yeah.
He just does it, and then you just sort of tell him, and he'll write it. It's sort of like performance art where he will actually write it on the spot, and then present to you the island all done. And then I totally clean it up, because he does it in like 5 minutes. So I'm like, yeah, this is great. I got to completely redo this. Yeah, like I got to redo this. I got to edit this thing. It's a good first try.
That's cool though.
But check that out, and then I'm going to be on tomorrow with Bob World Builder, and we are going to talk about Daggerheart.
Ooh.
I know Bob wanted to talk about it, so I was like, okay. I actually don't know that much about it, although it uses a very controversial 2d12s instead of a 1d20. I bet Mark Seifer's going to have words on that, because...
Oh my gosh. It takes all the swingy fun out of having
I'm like, why would anyone use...
Oh my God. That's like the Conan RPG, but worse.
Why would anyone... I'm like right there. As soon as I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, you never want."
That's not gonna sell. That's not gonna sell. Gotta keep the D20.
That bell curve is not a good. I don't like the bell curve. The bell curve messes up the maths. It's a bad move.
So bad.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what anyone uses a bell curve instead of a flat curve. We'll find out tomorrow. But thanks for joining me, and
thanks for having us.
Oh God.
This is fun chat.
I know. Next time we gotta do Mothership.
Oh man, I would be more than happy to. We should get in contact with Sean McCoy and see if he can come on and we can BS about Mothership.
Okay, I actually don't know Sean, but
Sean McCoy is the designer of Mothership.
yeah.
He's super cool dude, super cool guy.
Yeah, we can talk about it. Yeah, I would love to talk to him, and then hopefully we might be having Kelsey on this week too.
Ooh, yeah. No, she's a hoot. Kelsey is a wonderful gem of a human being. I'm glad she and I have become friends.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to meet her.
Yeah.
And then it's just going to be a who's who of people this week as I try to finish up this Kickstarter and then start the very next one right after this one for a completely different product that has nothing to do with this.
Steven, tell us about your next Kickstarter.
Nope, gotta go. Even I'm not going to talk about it. All right, thanks everyone. I'm starving.